So we've got a basic grounding in which window does what, but we need to know a little bit more about this viewer here in the upper right, because it doesn't work in the same way as viewers from other windows. It changes depending on what we're looking at any given point and which window we have currently active, or which of these three icons in the upper left of the viewer itself we have selected. So let's take a proper look at what this does. So if I double click any rush, it will open up and it will behave as though it is the source viewer. It will show me the rush and I can set my I/O here just like I could in any other viewer. But there's another way of viewing our rushes in the cut panel, and it's actually a really nice feature. At least it's the beginnings of a really nice feature, and that's what we call source tape. This icon here is source tape. So we have a basic grounding of what these three big windows in the cut panel broadly do. But let's take a much closer look at our viewer window here, because it does behave quite differently from in the other panels within Resolve. We're going to take a look at how this viewer works, and we're also going to take a look at a new and quite powerful way of looking at rushes within Resolve called the source tape option. And it's a nice feature. It's the beginnings of a nice and powerful feature. It's got some way to go yet, which is mainly to do with the lack of metadata filtering and smart bins within the cut panel. So let's take a closer look at how this viewer works. We know that it can show us either a rush if we double click, or if we go back down onto the timeline, it will show us our edit down here. And we can tell by either the highlighted icon in the upper left of the viewer or by the title at the top of it. It will be orange if it's a timeline, it will be white if it is a rush. But there is a third option which is very different and also has the potential to be quite powerful. We have the source tape option. Now, this is the standard open up a rush. This is the source viewer option, just like the source viewer in the edit panel from the previous module. But we can actually use this viewer to scrub through all of the rushes in a given bin. And the shortcut for that, if we have a rush open, is Shift and Q, or alternatively, we can click this icon here that looks like a film strip. Now, you can see in the timeline below the image in this viewer, we have these little white dividing lines down here. And these show us on this timeline where rushes begin and end. And I can now just drag my playhead back, or I can JK and L shuttle. And what it will actually do is go between all the rushes I have open. And the rush I have showing up in this viewer will be highlighted in orange in my media pool. So I always know which rush I'm actually looking at. What is useful about this is that the rushes are organized on this timeline in the exact same order that they are organized in this media pool, going from the upper left down to the lower right. Because I have named my clips according to the slate, I have all takes of each angle next to each other. So if I now go to this, I can scrub through multiple takes of the same angle very, very quickly. And that's a really nice feature to have, and it's quite useful for first assembly when we want to measure up several different takes and choose what we believe is the best one, as opposed to going back, double click this, scrub through, double click that, scrub through, double click, So that is actually quite a nice little feature. It would be much better if it could cooperate with metadata filtering and smart bins, but as I've said, it currently cannot. We would have to manually make and populate bins in order to do that, and that becomes very time consuming and therefore self-defeating. So this is the source tape function, and whilst I'm scrubbing through here, I/O works in the exact same way. And I can just go and do an insert, and there we go. So it works in the exact same way as it does everywhere else, J, K, L, F9, F10. Although insert works a little bit differently in this panel, and we will talk about the editing shortcuts in the next lecture. We will talk about 3-point editing in the next lecture. So I just wanted to make it clear how this viewer works. A lot of people who have their backgrounds in Avid or Premiere Pro find this single viewer approach pretty confusing, and I did to begin with. But it's just a matter of keeping an eye on where you're working. If you are working in the timeline, it's going to show you your current edit. If you double click a rush, it will show you the rush. If you're going to go to source tape, you either have to hold shift and hit Q or hit that icon. And just a word about the shift Q shortcut for the source tape. If we have our timeline open, if we're viewing our timeline, shift and Q is not going to switch us to source tape mode. We have to hit Q ordinarily, and then that takes us to our source viewer mode. And then once we're in that source viewer mode, we can toggle between source tape or just straight up source viewer. Look at the rush, right? So think of it as having two separate modes. The timeline mode is its own thing, and you have to toggle, which is Q, back to one of the two source modes before shifting Q allows you to toggle between source tape. And the shift and Q shortcut is quite useful because obviously it's going to then open up the rush that you have open. So I could mouse over to this rush, and on this timeline that's pretty short. So I go shift and Q, open it up properly, I do my IO here, and then shift and Q, go back, and then I can mouse forwards and go ahead and work on other clips. So the shift Q to toggle between, source tape and standard source viewer mode is actually very useful. So just mouse through, shift and Q, open up whichever rush I've got, full length, do my IO, toggle back to source tape, scrub through to another clip. Okay, so we've now spent long enough on the source tape viewing option. It's a big one. It's one of the main features of the cut panel, so I wanted to make sure that it's completely clear how it works. Think of it as just a very easy way to navigate and scrub between rushes that lets us see how everything else plays out. So again, I just scrub through, and you've guessed it by now, shift and Q for like the 5th time. Do my thing, toggle back out, move along. Then it's just the standard Q button to go back to my actual timeline view, and I can just JKL shuttle through all of this. So that's the source tape viewing mode. We are going to start going over all of the different functions and tools for 3-point editing in the cut panel next. So click on through to the next lecture.